kind of worked his way up to the ranks, and now Gerry Scharfenberger, our state.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. I'll build upon what he said. He's right. I was elected as a committee man in Middletown. Then I became deputy mayor. Then I was mayor for 6 terms. Then I was a freeholder, and now I'm just beginning my 2nd term as assemblyman. So I always tell everybody I'm like George Jefferson. Remember him moving on them? So it's funnier when I say it to you face to face. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for inviting me to the Hazlitt Business Association here. And I'm thinking about what am I going to talk about when I get here to the businesses. So I thought, okay, I'll bring you into my world of New Jersey budget and being in the minority in New Jersey and how it affects businesses. And I should tell you a little bit of my background here. I'm served on 4 committees, and committees in the Assembly and the Senate is where bills are first heard, and you discuss them, and then you decide if they go to the full floor for a vote. And it's good because I'm on higher ed, I'm on the Environment Committee, I'm on regulated professions. So anybody who's got a real estate license or any sort of licensing like that comes through my committee. And also the Budget Committee, which is like top of the food chain. Budget Committee, and yesterday we had our last meeting where you bring in DEP, DCA, all of those departments, and they have to come in and sort of justify their existence. And it's like the Watergate hearings. You're sitting around this big U-shaped table, and you ask them questions, and why are you spending all this? How do you justify that? But it's really an eye-opener. Not to get too depressing, but the governor's budget this year is $48.9 billion. When he took over, it was 34 billion. It's a 41% increase. This is outrageous. Nobody can support this sort of extreme spending. So we're there trying to, bring it down a little bit here and there where we can, make suggestions. And some of the spending is crazy. Funniest thing, and this just happened yesterday, and I saw it, I'm like, this is too good to come the day before I come here. I don't know if you've heard about it, but there was a bill introduced yesterday. I'm not kidding. I actually sent it back to the guy who sent it to me. Is this a joke? Very funny. Somebody wants to create a $250,000 grant program to help students study UFOs in New Jersey. People are getting pushed out by their property taxes. They can't afford $6, almost $6 a gallon gas. And somebody wants to spend $250,000 to help study UFOs. Folks, this is what we're up against in New Jersey here. So, but the good news is we made some inroads, and we've been, pushing back and getting some results. I don't want to deviate too much, but auto thefts is on everybody's mind. Auto thefts and, people coming into people's driveways and actually going into the kitchen and getting the keys or the fob. So Vicki Flynn, who's the other assembly person in District 13, and I should have said this before, my district goes from Aberdeen down to Oceanport and as far west as Marlborough. So anybody who's in any one of those 16 towns that's part of my kingdom. But we're working on legislation to reverse the bail reform. There are some bad dudes getting out of jail. Like immediately, the police chief is calling me up saying these guys are out of jail before the ink is dry on my report. And they'll arrest them again the next week, out of jail. And this is over and over again. And they know this too. The other thing, and we were able to get this reversed, and this was Vicki and me sending a letter to the Attorney General demanding that we either meet or he reverse the policy. If you get into a stolen car as a criminal and the wheels are rolling and the police pull up alongside, they couldn't chase them. So they would, flip them the bird and drive off. That's now reversed, where they can at least cut them off if they're pulling out of a driveway. This is how crazy it's getting in this state. But it takes this kind of event where you have repeated, assault. Some guy was in his garage and somebody pulled a gun on him, walked into the driveway and, had him turn over the keys. So somebody is going to get really hurt unless we reverse this. So there are things being done, is what I'm trying to say, and everybody's on edge because I can't go to the shop right without like, oh my God, I heard my neighbor got robbed and it's terrible. So there is, hopefully we're starting to reel this in. But it's been a 4-year fight to keep guys and gals who should be in jail, and arrest those who aren't in jail who should be. So this is a little bit of the culture war we're fighting. But some of the things too that I'm working on, it's some positive for business too. We're working on getting the unemployment insurance fund totally replenished and made whole with CARES Act money. If that doesn't happen, every business in the state is going to get whacked, because I think it's short $756 million, if I'm not mistaken, some outrageous number. There is CARES Act money available that we're pressuring the governor, and I think he's going to do it. I heard noises about it, but it hasn't been done last we checked. So if that happens, everybody here can breathe a sigh of relief that the unemployment fund is made whole again without coming to you for a big tax increase. So that's one thing. Does everybody know what an ETR is? Does anybody, if you just raise your hand, if you know what that is? Show off. Yeah. Energy tax receipts. What it is in short, if you've ever seen a power line corridor that goes through most towns in New Jersey, or the little substations. We have one right by the Burger King in Middletown here, and all over. The utilities pay a fee for that because it's taken off the tax rolls. It used to go directly to the towns, up until, I think it was Governor McGreevey, who changed it and had the power companies send it to Trenton to give to the towns. Well, guess what happens? It goes into the black hole of the general fund, and the towns see a tiny little bit. I think Woodbridge is the top dog in this. They lose $20 million a year in that. Middletown's lost tens of millions of dollars over the years. I think Homedale loses $1.2 million or something a year. Imagine if that went back to the towns, what that would do to property taxes and everybody having more discretionary spending to support small businesses. So that this is all interrelated. I have a bill that would return it. It's like a paragraph, just saying, instead of going here, it now goes here. And that would be a game changer. And I'm working on getting some majority support for it. So keep your fingers crossed. But if that works, that would be a game changer for just about every town in the state, and it would really impact businesses in a good way. I'm co-sponsor on a bill that would cut the CBT. I think New Jersey has the highest CBT in the state, in the country. I just checked yesterday because I had EDA for the budget. So if that works, if we can cut that, we would not only be more competitive, but businesses would easily become more profitable, because that CBT is a death blow for a lot of businesses every time they raise it. And you know how it is, when your margins narrow, you can't afford to absorb this stuff. I just wanted to say something too about inflation and prices and all that. Before they adopted the minimum wage going up to $15 an hour, which I think is ridiculous. I was a kid who grew up in Brooklyn making $3 an hour minimum wage, delivering newspapers and stuff, and I was thrilled. It taught me how to be an employee, to teach responsibility. Now you're giving kids flipping burgers, which is lovely, but $15 an hour to start. And it really had a bad impact all along, because now the supervisor was making $14 an hour. Now there's a differential, especially in towns and things like that where there are union contracts. So the cost of labor went up astronomically. Now you go into ShopRite, and I'm not picking on ShopRite, but carton of eggs, almost $8. This is where it's coming from. And I've spoken to business owners, and you can probably verify it for me. Before this whole, inflation stuff of the last few months, that was putting pressure on prices too, because as soon as January 1st came in and the next step came in on the increase, my gut feeling is if it gets to the point, and what is it now? You guys probably know better than I do. Is it like 12-ish? 12? It's going to go up to 15 by, 2025, I think. So if it gets to a certain point, because it already happened, St. Louis raised their minimum wage to $15 and lowered it back to 10, because the businesses just couldn't survive. They were hemorrhaging businesses. So we'll have to wait and see on this. But between inflation, gas prices, and now the minimum wage automatically, and the 2.5% fee on insurance policies that kicked in last year, how much can you absorb? And I mentioned supermarkets before. I think they work on a very narrow margin, a percent or something, really. They can't keep absorbing these big things without raising prices or automating the wazoo out of their cashiers. So this is sort of the fight we're having now. And it's a lot of ideological. My opponents, they're lovely people, but we just disagree on the nuts and bolts of things. And sometimes they would rather say, I'm doing this for you, rather than look at the reality of what they're going to be doing in the long run and how that would affect people. Because if the same group that they're trying to help with higher minimum wage and all of that mandated are the ones who are going to be losing the jobs if they can't make it. I mean, and I always use $1,000. If you have $1,000 for employees and you can hire 4, and you raise their pay, you're going to have 3, but you're still going to be spending $1,000 on employees. So this is really, an ideological fight as much as a financial one. So I don't want to ramble on too much. So if anybody has any questions, I wrote out a little list, but I think I covered pretty much everything that I thought would be of interest. But me, I'm the eternal optimist. I think the state is really going to turn around. I think we're making some good headway with some good policy stuff, changes. Certainly mandates and you guys all got affected by it. Every restaurant owner, with the mask, do you wear a mask, all that stuff. And ironically, I think we had 30 members of the legislature test positive in December. It was outrageous. Every one of them were vaccinated and stuff. So all of this stuff, the mandates, you can argue whether the vaccine works, whether the masks work. Give us the information, talk to your doctor, get the advice, and let people operate on their own, including businesses. And I got calls from a lot of small businesses saying, listen, we know how to do this. We know how to keep our places clean. We know how to separate out the tables. We know this, just let us do it. And, that's where a lot of the struggle came in. At one point, there were a third of the businesses put permanently out of business. I think some of them have come back, that third, but the majority of that third are still out. So that's really gut-wrenching to me, because I would get the calls of somebody on the other end sobbing, like, my great-grandfather started this business, I'm going to have to close now. So this is the sort of thing that we're fighting, and hopefully we're making some headway. But there is good news. There's some good legislation that we're able to be moving through the pike, and hopefully you'll see some improvement in the business climate here, because every what am I looking for? Every survey you see is not good for New Jersey. It's always, we're near the top or near the bottom, depending on how you look at it. The top worse or the bottom worse. So with that, if anybody has any questions, look at this.
Where are we with the cannabis licensing state?
It's a disaster. Yeah, I'm sorry. Where are we with the cannabis? It's coming very slow. I think there's 4 or 5 medical dispensaries. Part of the problem is the police don't have a way to measure intoxication at a traffic stop. So that's slowing things up a little bit. There's a couple of things being developed, but they're not approved. And what happens is if a policeman gives somebody a ticket for intoxicated driving, they get to court and they'll say, well, how do you know he was intoxicated? We did a visual examination. That's not going to hold up in court. So that's a little bit of it, Locations, a lot of towns are passing ordinances. They don't want it there. There's a few who do want it, so that's not a bad thing either. Locals should decide. But it's very slow. DCA is involved with it, DEP to a degree, Treasury is certainly involved in it. So it's working its way through the process. But, New Jersey.
Sports betting took a long time.
It did, but, in a way, that's a little bit easier lift, because it won't, if somebody gambles their life savings away, it's not going to affect the guy driving next to them, So that was a little bit heavier lift of ice, but still, a little bit easier to get through the gauntlet. But this is New Jersey, between all the permitting and now all the wrangling back and forth between departments. It's tough. So, anybody else? Okay, well, listen, I'm going to leave my cards up here, and I'm very responsive. Anybody who calls me or emails me, I get back to them right away. And I really want you to tell me, and then a lot of times I'll hear of an issue or a problem with a law or something that's missing from somebody who's got to deal with it every day. So that's the only way we'll really find out if there's something that's standing in your way, whether it's a permit problem with DCA or DEP, as they call it, the Department of Environmental Persecution. But all of these agencies we deal with, so we can help as far as that kind of thing. Or if there's a law that's really an impediment to what you have to do, no matter what it is, let me know about it and I'll get on it. And, Vicki and I are very efficient that way. Vicki's a brilliant attorney and we make a great team. So with that, I want to thank you for inviting me. This is always great, and keep in touch, okay? Thank you.